Test, test.
Looks like you got levels.
Test.
Static.
Just static.
Yeah.
Check, check. 1, 2.
I didn't get any. Oh, that's right.
Check, 1, 2.
We didn't bring the malt box out.
I didn't bring the malt box, unfortunately. I'm here right now. It's left only, that's why.
and we're going to try to get ahead of the rain. And so please take a seat. Please cut off your cell phones. If you'll cut those off, that will help us. Oh, they're still coming in. And we had set up a lot of these. Huh? Would the members of the committee please join us around the horseshoe here? Well, good morning again, and thank you for coming today to the House Rural Development Council. And at this time, I would like to introduce our co-chair, Representative Mac Jackson. And Representative Jackson is going to open us with prayer at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Green.
You will be.
Thank you, Chairman Green. Good morning to everybody, and thank you for being here with us on today. Let's bow our heads. Father, we thank you for this day. We ask for your mercy and your grace as we carry out the business of this great state of Georgia. We thank you for being able to be here, Lord, and we ask for your blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Chairman Jackson. At this time, I would like to introduce the person that has made this available, this building, this day available, and that is Tom McCall, the president of the Georgia Farm Bureau. And Tom, if you'll come forward and tell us. Tom is our old friend, member of the legislature for many years, and still a great advocate for agriculture throughout the state of Georgia. And thank you, Tom, for everything, your staff that has worked so diligently to make this happen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad you said staff, because they're the ones that have done a lot of the work. But welcome, y'all, to Georgia Farm Bureau. You know, we are proud you're here. We are the largest general farm organization in the state of Georgia, and by us being that and affiliated with American, we are the largest general farm organization in America. So what we do is look after rural Georgia. And we were started in 1937, and our specific stated purpose is to be able to represent farmers in the legislative arena. That was in 1937, and 86 years later, we still have that specific purpose. But I just want to tell you a little bit for a second, if you'll let me, Mr. Chairman, about what we do and why every one of y'all ought to be a member as far as that goes. But, you know, agriculture in Georgia contributes $73 billion to the economy, and our farmers in Georgia produce everything from apples to zucchini. And one thing I'm going to ask y'all to do, there's a thing called CUVA and there's a thing called GATE. That helps our farmers stay in business. So if somebody wants to start monkeying around with either one of those, I'm asking y'all to not let them monkey around, especially with GATE. So, and there's some conversations going on, but we represent each one of those producers through our policies that our people work for when they come and talk to y'all, that are developed at a grassroots level by your constituents in the counties where we have 158 different county offices. We have somewhere around 245,000 member families, and if you're counting votes, I said families, so that rolled into about 500,000 votes. So I know politicians count votes every once in a while. That's just a little bit about what our federation is about, but we not only advocate for farmers, agriculture, natural resources, and rural Georgia, we protect our member families from loss by being the largest domicile insurance company in the state of Georgia. It is owned by our members, and we provide the best customer service in the market, anywhere. You know, there's other companies that have a place, and some of them sell insurance, but I can promise you this, you don't have the cell phone number to the president of Allstate or State Farm or any of them. And if you look right in front of you, you got the cell phone number to Farm Bureau Insurance. We also own a life insurance company with 9 other southern states, and we own a bank, part of a bank that Gerald was asking me that yesterday. We're paying somewhere around 4.5% interest on CDs. So, you know, if you want to be a member and dig your money up out of your mayonnaise jars like Daryl did and let it be making a little bit, we welcome you. The other thing I want you to do is pray a little bit. We don't want this hurricane on a whole bunch of different levels. We hope it, we just hope it slows down a little bit before it gets to Georgia. I texted the Florida president today, and they are real worried about it. But if you are a Georgia Farm Bureau member, this is your building. If you are not a Georgia Farm Bureau member, we can remedy that today. And if you'll look at the other little card in front of you with our new mascot, Lucky, who is actually a real dog, a real Australian Shepherd farm dog, and you do the little squiggly QR code, it will take you, I'm sorry, I must have hit something. That's my technology. It will take you straight to how you can become a Farm Bureau member for only $35 a year. And if you back out of that, that ain't but a half a Coca-Cola a week to be a member of the largest farm organization that takes care of rural Georgia. So, you know, it's great to see all my old friends. Some of you is older than others, but anyway, I miss y'all. I don't necessarily miss maybe some of the stuff you have to deal with. But thank y'all for coming to Farm Bureau. Thank you for doing what you do, especially for rural Georgia. And we at Farm Bureau want to be at your service and your first and most trusted resource when it comes to ag issues or water issues or rural Georgia issues, even insurance and tort reform issues. We would love to talk to you about that kind of stuff. You know, we have the best employees and staff, somewhere around 1,200 or 1,300, I don't know exactly what the number is, that I have ever been lucky enough to work with. And I want to thank today our public policy team, our executive team, our public relations team, the field service team, and especially our building and maintenance team that set up all this and what's upstairs for you. They all know, like most of y'all know when you knew me back in the legislature, that I couldn't do what I do without y'all's friend Jane. You'll see the little candy dishes, there's flowers in the ladies' bathrooms, there's flowers upstairs that she was picking out of her zinnia patch Sunday when it was 100 degrees. So even the landscaping out front, y'all know I can't do what I do. But I don't know how much of our staff people are here. Would y'all just wave? We the executive team and our public policy. And if y'all remember, when I was fortunate enough to sit in Chairman Dickey's office, there was a popcorn machine. We moved part of it down here, so there's popcorn back there for y'all whenever you want it. That office on 5th floor that they let me sit in at this time is open to you anytime you through Macon or anytime. It is open to you. And there's one thing that ain't got nothing to do with nothing. I don't know how many of y'all walked in the front door, but you might have got a whiff or something out there. I know Chairman Corbett's favorite thing is hemp and marijuana, but there's some kind of flower there's some kind of flower out there that we were here one night and thought some of the cleaning crew was smoking weed over in a car. So if you get a whiff of it, it ain't marijuana. It's some flower. But anyway, thank y'all very much for coming. Please holler at us if you need anything, Mr. Chairman. Both of y'all, Chairman, thank you for coming to Farm Bureau. We are at your disposal anytime you need us, and we look forward to working with y'all to take care of rural Georgia and agriculture. So appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much, Tom. At this time, we're going to ask Representative Dale Washburn, and then I'll turn it over to Chairman Mac Jackson for another introduction.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chairman Green and Chairman Jackson and Vice Chairman John Corbett. And I welcome all of the members of the Regional Development Council to House District 144. I'm honored to be the representative from District 144, of course. It's a great district. I told somebody a minute ago I got the best district in the state. I've got North Bibb County, a big part of Monroe County, and a big part of Jones County. And so I am honored to be here with you today, and we appreciate you coming to Macon. In a few minutes, I'm going to introduce our mayor, and I'm going to let him tell you some things about Macon and some of the good things that are going on here and the good things he is doing here. I appreciate all that you do. Obviously, there are two Georgias, as we often hear about. There's Metro Atlanta and our other cities, and then there's rural Georgia. And of course, we have some challenges in rural Georgia, and we're working hard to do things to address those challenges and concerns. And I appreciate all your hard work in that process. I'm blessed in my district because I represent one of the largest cities, the northern portion of one of the largest cities in Georgia, but I also have some rural areas, and so I'm delighted to have that mix. I want to thank you for all the work you've done, and then I want to ask you to consider some other work on a couple of topics before I close. I appreciate so much everything you've done. One of our greatest successes, of course, has been the expansion of broadband, and that was a great success that we have had, great combination, great partnership. That has done an awful lot for rural Georgia and will continue to do that. Before I introduce the mayor, this is one state representative who would like to ask you to think about a couple of things in your work as we go forward. We know, Mr. Chairman, we got a big surplus right now, and some of this has to do with how we might think about using that surplus. I know that's not your decision to make, but you can have a voice in the process. We are working hard, of course, to develop rural Georgia, and we think about economic development. There are two components I would like to ask you to think about as we go forward. One is housing. We need housing in rural Georgia. We need infrastructure, and of course that's where some of that surplus funding could come into play. If you put in water and sewer, which is very expensive, I believe growth will go to some of the rural counties in Georgia relative to housing. If you have water and sewer, you can put more houses to the acre. And Chairman McCall, President McCall, that uses up less farmland if we put more houses to the acre. By the way, before I leave the subject of President McCall, I am very proud to have the Georgia Farm Bureau here in District 144, and I meant to mention that to start with, Mr. President. I apologize that I forgot. I'm delighted to have them here. Donna and I don't live but about 3 miles away from them, and so it always warms my heart when I turn on I-75 to head north when I look right at the Georgia Farm Bureau. So I appreciate that. I think we should be thinking about what we can do to enhance housing in rural Georgia. We have some areas that doesn't have as much room as we have in rural Georgia for housing, and our families need a place to live. Our workforce needs a place to live. The other issue that I would like to ask you to think about is health care. Obviously health care is a challenge, and especially in rural Georgia where we have hospitals closing and we have problems delivering good health care. If we believe that all Georgians deserve good health care, and I believe we do believe that. If we believe that, this is one representative who believes it's time for us to do some bold, innovative thinking about what we should do to help fund good health care for all Georgians. Rural Georgia needs it. South Georgia in particular needs it. And I hope that you will continue to think about those things as we go forward. I am honored to be here. I want to thank you again for coming. Now, before I leave, I want to introduce our mayor. We have Mayor Lester Miller here with us today, and Mayor Miller is working very hard to address problems in Macon and Bibb County, and he's meeting with success. I'm not going to plow the ground ahead of him. I'm going to let him tell you about some of the things he's doing. We're very proud of our downtown and what's going on there, and some other things that he'll tell you more about. So please help me recognize and welcome Mayor Lester Miller.
Thank you, Representative Washburn, and I see two of my other local delegations here, so I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Ms. Miriam Parrish, as well as Mr. Robert Dickey. Thank you both for being here today, and thank you for all the work. What he didn't tell you is because of those three, along with the great work of the citizens of Macon-Bibb County, our millage rate is down almost 50% in 3 years. So I don't think anybody across the state of Georgia can say that. That is good for all business, so thank you for what you continue to do. It's also my pleasure to be here and one of our best partners in all of Macon-Bibb County, and that's at the Georgia Farm Bureau. Not too long ago, we endeavored to take on a situation we had at Brookdale Resource Center. Many of you may know about that, but that is one of our transition places for those experiencing homelessness. The very basic necessity outside of shelter is good food. And despite getting good quality pricing that we get at our local food bank at about 19% a pound, we wanted to make sure that the men and women there at that resource center could have some good fresh fruits and vegetables. We also want to make sure those children there know that you don't get your milk directly from Kroger or Publix. It comes from another source. And you don't get those good green beans and that squash and those fresh peaches and all those other great things that we have in our community from a store only. They need to know how that operates. But we also wanted them to know that, look, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We want to make sure that you know there are good quality jobs and economic development in the field of agriculture. And we continue to do that. We harp on it through our College and Career Academy. We ask you, as leaders in this state, to create more pathways for good quality jobs so we can provide a workforce to help improve that. You know, I go back to a time just a couple of years ago that I had the pleasure to speak to David Ralston, toward the end of his life. And Shaw Blackman had asked me to be at an event in his neighborhood there, and I went there for a little reception. And I just wanted some small talk with the legend. And I had some conversation with him, and he brought up, not this council specifically, but he talked about, at that time, I think we were probably 7 years of the best place to do business in the United States. And he talked about how we need to make sure that that trickles down to everywhere, including our rural communities, and how we need to level the playing field. And that's something that kind of stuck with me through our process, so we continue to educate our people here in Macon-Bibb County on the importance of that. We've got an expansion out there at Brookdale that we talked about. That's going to involve making sure that we have chickens there so they can produce that free fertilizer that we get, so we can actually replenish that garden there. I'll tell you this, so far in the last 60 days, we have grown 2,458 pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables, enough food that'll feed that Brookdale Resource Center for over a year for 150 people, and it's saving us a lot of money. So we certainly appreciate that. So on behalf of Macon-Bibb County, we are doing well. We have a thriving downtown. We have a world-class amphitheater coming to Macon-Bibb County. We also have the world's largest indoor pickleball coming to Macon-Bibb County. Believe it or not, it's going to be the first of its kind, 32 courts indoor, heated and cooled. Going to host a lot of tournaments here, going to have a lot of fun there. Going to grow a lot of business here in Macon-Bibb County, which will help our taxpayers thanks to the OLAS. But it'll be the first of a kind, and we're thinking outside the box, and we really have a lot of great things coming in our community. So on behalf of the mayor of Macon-Bibb County, myself, and the 9 commissioners that I have to work with each and every day, I want to welcome you here to our community. Those that are traveling here, please spend all the money you can while you're here. We certainly could use your sales tax today. Our citizens would appreciate, our small business would appreciate that. But while you're here, if you should have any issues whatsoever, please don't hesitate to call me. I have an open door policy at my office there, walk right into City Hall, and you'll see my door wide open, literally. So I thank you for your time here today. Once again, thank you for the Farm Bureau for being an excellent partner for Macon-Bibb County, and thank you for our local delegation for continuing to serve the needs of our community and working hand in hand beside our local county commission. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate those comments, and we certainly are enjoying our time here in Macon. Chairman Jackson, if you'll introduce another local representative here.
Thank you, Chairman Green. I want to introduce Representative Miriam Parrish from District 142 right here in Macon, Georgia.
Hey, everybody, to my colleagues and to everyone that's present today. Just want to say welcome to Macon, Georgia. This is my home. I'm a fourth-generation Maconite, and I'm very proud of my city. It's a lot of things to do here. We want to thank you all for having your event here in Macon. And as the mayor said, one of our foremost things is that you please leave your indelible mark that you were here by spending your tax dollars before you leave. That's real important to us because we're trying to do everything we can to make ends meet. But we just want to welcome you to Macon. Our slogan is where soul lives. You know, Macon is where the architect of rock and roll, Little Richard, the Allman Brothers, Otis Redding, and the list goes on and on. We just want to welcome you to our rich history. We are celebrating our 200th, our bicentennial anniversary this year, so please help join us in our celebration of this great city. Thank you, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Macon.
Thank you, Representative Parrish, for taking time out of your busy schedule and coming by here to welcome everybody. Chairman Green.
Thank you. On behalf of the state of Georgia, I would like to invite to the podium our Majority Leader, Chuck F. Stration.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman Green, and thank you, Co-Chairman Jackson. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to join you here. My 5-year-old at school was asked what he wants to do when he grows up, and he very enthusiastically said he wants to be a farmer. And so I may invite him to come along with me to one of your subsequent meetings if that's all right. I think he'd love to participate. I just think that the Speaker Ralston was referenced just a moment ago, and the legacy that has been left through his initial creation of the Rural Development Council and the tremendous work that this council has done over the years, I think is very clear. Issues that are important to rural Georgia are important to all Georgians, and that cannot be forgotten. It's something that we must continue to prioritize at the state capitol, and I'm very appreciative for each and every member who's on this board, and look forward to seeing the great recommendations and work that you'll do. Thank you again, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. We're going to start with Chairman Perkle over there and let him come around and introduce the members of the council here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clay Perkle. I represent, well, I'm a dirt farmer. I farm in Turner County and Irwin County. I represent Turner, Irwin, Tift, Coffee counties in South Georgia.
Thank you. I'm Matt Hatchett. I'm from Dublin. I've been on this council since it started and looking forward to seeing what else we might be able to do to help rural Georgia. Let's see, I'm not a dirt farmer, but I grew up raising cattle and everything related to that. So.
I'm Noel Williams, House District 148. I'm out of Cordele. I represent all of Crisp, Pulaski, Wilcox, South and Central Houston, and a portion of Ben Hill. I'm happy to be here and look forward to today. Thank you.
Representative Steve Tarvin, District 2. I represent parts of Walker, Whitfield, and Catoosa County in northwest Georgia. This is my first meeting on the council, and I am a rural Georgian, raised on a farm and poultry and cattle farm, and I'm glad to be involved. We definitely need development in rural Georgia.
I'm Bill Yerta, District 152, which is Worth, Lee, and a portion of Daugherty County, and I'm just excited to be here and do things that we can do to advance rural Georgia. Thank you.
I'm Bill Workheiser, represent Tattnall, Evans, Appling, and Jeff Davis County. Retired from the printing business and just do some real estate right now.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hagan. I represent House District 156. That's part of Tattnall, Telfair, and Ben Hill counties, and all of Toombs, Montgomery, Wheeler counties down just east of here, between here and Savannah. Happy to be here and learn about the needs of rural Georgia and see what we can do to push us forward. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lynn Smith, Representative Smith from House District 70, Coweta, parts of Coweta, and parts of Carroll. I've always represented a large rural area part of the state, but unfortunately Atlanta's nearby and we're becoming urban in certain areas, and so I really get to experience all the problems of that kind of growth and how important it is to be good conservationists for our state. I also chair House Natural Resource and Environment Committee, which means I wear a bullseye on my back, but I'm always happy to do whatever I can to balance the needs and resources of our state.
Rick Jaspers, House District 11, up in Pickens, the northern part of Cherokee, and Forsyth. You know, Lynn, I'm like you. I thought they were going to throw me off this thing when I got part of Forsyth County in the last 3 districts game, but been a member, as Hatchett was, since the beginning of this, with Chairman England and Chairman Powell, and I enjoy it. Look forward to working to see what we can do for our great state.
There you go. I'm Alan Powell. I represent the 33rd District. I represent Hart, Franklin, and Madison County in northeast Georgia, and you just can't get to Macon real easy from up there. I'll just tell you. Served on this council for the last few years. It's been a great experience. I would make an observation that northeast Georgia was one of the best hid secrets in the world until the pandemic. We used to complain about folks from the Northeast moving down there, and now we got folks from California. So I would caution the folks about rural Georgia. We have another pandemic. There probably won't be anything rural left in Georgia. So for those folks in rural Georgia who keep saying they want growth, be careful what you ask for. You're going to probably get it.
My name is Mac Jackson. I represent District 128, Washington County, the kaolin capital of the world, Hancock County, Glasscock County, Warren County, parts of Baldwin, and parts of McDuffie County. And I've been on this council since its inception in 2017. And the great work that we've been doing on this council, we pray that we can continue the legacy that the late Speaker David Ralston envisioned for this council. Amen. But thank everybody for being here today, and we hopefully we can provide legislation that will benefit rural Georgia.
I'm Gerald Green. I'm the other co-chair of this particular council. I represent District 154 down in southwest Georgia. I have 9 counties there, and I'm not going to try to name them all because I'll probably leave one out. You know, this council has made great improvements in legislation and appropriations. And you'll hear and look and see that most of the individuals around here serve on the Appropriations Committee. And we are fortunate to have Matt Hatcher as the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. We had Terry England, now he's Chief of Staff and a longtime member of this committee. And most of these individuals are individuals that are concerned about agriculture. In fact, all of them are. That's why they serve on this. And we're just glad to have each and every one of them. We have several members that could not make it. They are concerned about, they're from deep in South Georgia, and they are having concerns about the weather. And so we will keep them in prayer and concern as we move forward. But thank you all for what you've done to set this up for us all.
Is it on? Yeah, Representative Robert Dickey. I represent District 145, all the parts of 5 counties right here in Middle Georgia that surround Macon. Glad everyone's here in Middle Georgia. I'm a tree farmer. As Chairman Perkles is a dirt farmer, I guess I grow peaches and pine trees and pecan trees. So I'm glad this council and everybody realizes the importance of agriculture to the health of rural Georgia, and I'm a big advocate for that. So glad to be here. Glad this council's here. It's been very important, Chairman, as you said, to all of Georgia and especially rural Georgia.
My name is Penny Houston. I represent Berrien, Cook, and Tift County. That's part of Tift and part of Cook. I share Tift with Representative Perkle. And I have been on this council since 2017, and I'm so proud to serve on it. I grew up in a rural area, Calhoun County, and I still have farm interest in Calhoun County. And I'm a member of the Farm Bureau. Thank you.
Me too. I'm Al Williams. I represent Liberty County. I might be the only legislature from rural Georgia that represents one county, and that's the best county, the County of Liberty. I'm enjoying the service here on this great committee, and I thank Representative Washburn for some things he said, and I would certainly hope that we look a little out of the box, because we need to investigate the allocation system for water in Georgia. Don't care how much you're standing on. If you cannot draw it, it ain't much good to you. Thank you.
Well, thank all of you for coming. I'd also like to introduce our legislative council, and he'll speak just moments here.
So as the chairman said, my name's Vince Wiegand, and I'm not a legislator, but as a legislative counsel, I definitely look forward to seeing what the committee comes up with and drafting legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're running a little bit ahead, but that's good. That's good. And at this time, we'll call on the Georgia Farm Bureau president. We'll set up for the presentation here. And by the way, while we're waiting, y'all please see Stacy Williams. Oh, there Stacy is my admin, and she's going to be taking care of some housekeeping things for you. If you'll make sure you get certain things from her and sign the roster over there, please. And Leo, we thank you so much for what you've done to make sure all of this works. So if y'all need anything, see Leo as well. And then we have our house group over here, the media. So watch what you say. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Adam Bellflower, and it's tough to be the Farm Bureau employee that has to follow Mr. McCall. Thank y'all legislators for allowing us to steal him from y'all and allow him to be our president. We've really enjoyed his time here. It's a blessing to have him step from the Ag Committee and getting his leadership there to see how he still influences the Ag community as our president. So we're very thankful for that. But like I said, my name is Adam Bellflower. I work here at Georgia Farm Bureau. This is my office every day when I'm not in the Capitol during the legislative session getting to work with y'all. And so I'm going to take a second. Mr. McCall kind of hit on a little bit about Farm Bureau and kind of gave y'all an overview of what we do here. But I'm going to spend a little bit more time elaborating on that. we often get confused as just an insurance company, and I promise you that insurance is a big part of what we do, but representing farmers and representing rural Georgia is the most important thing that we do here in this building. So our purpose is up here. It says to provide leadership and assistance to the agricultural sector, to promote farm products, to aid in ag-related procurement, to be a spokesman for the farmer in the legislative arena, to be a leader in the development and expansion of farm markets, to strive for more agricultural research and educational funds and facilities. So we have underlined and bolded to be a spokesman for the farmer in the legislative arena. And like I said, that is our main purpose. Back in 1937, we were founded by 50 farmers in Bartow County for that goal. And to this day, everything that happens in this building is with that focus to represent the farmer to the best of our ability. A few bullet points you see under there. We have 158 county offices, and each one of those county offices has a county board made up of farmers from that community. What that means is in every one of the legislative districts that is represented here today and also that is represented in the Capitol, we have members, we have county offices, and we have county boards that seek to make their voices heard to y'all and communicate to y'all the issues that they're facing in y'all's districts. We are led by volunteers. We are made up of policies and programs that are all directed by our members, and I'm going to kind of circle back to that. And as you heard Mr. McCall say, we are truly grassroots. We talk a lot about that here at Farm Bureau. Mr. McCall is quick to mention we are ran from the bottom up, not the top down. Our members truly do dictate what we do around here. Without our members, they're the ones that set our policies. They're the ones that tell me and our governmental affairs team and our public policy department what to say, what to communicate, and what to bring to y'all and bring to y'all's attention from the farm community. So we're going to take a second. I mentioned I'm from the public policy department. That is where our governmental affairs team is housed. But I want to speak a little bit on what we do in that department. We kind of have three buckets. Our director is Alex Bradford. Many of y'all know him. He spent a lot of time in the Capitol the past 10 years, but he oversees our department, and we have our ag programs, we have our governmental affairs, and then we have our advocacy work that we do. So our ag programs is headed up by Rainer Churchwell and Jeremy Taylor. They are two former extension agents that we have working in our office, and they oversee our 20 commodity advisory committees. Every commodity that is grown in the state of Georgia is represented somewhere between in these 20 commodity advisory committees. Whether it's grain crops like corn, soybeans, wheat, whether it's peanuts, whether it's water, aquaculture, fruit and vegetables, you name it, and we have a commodity advisory committee that oversees the issues that growers in that industry are facing. This is our way of making sure that our policy and what we do at Farm Bureau has a good pulse on the ag industry all across the state. Next is our advocacy work that we do. So Keaton Walker, we recently poached her from Circle F Farms down in Baxley, Georgia. If any of y'all are familiar with that operation, she oversees that section of our office, and her main role is helping our members tell their story to y'all. Y'all can hear from us all y'all want, but me and Jake and Ben, at the end of the day, we're not farmers. We have farm backgrounds, we have strong ties to the farm, but we're not farmers, and we don't live in y'all's districts. We think it's important at Farm Bureau that as the legislators and as the policymakers, y'all are hearing directly from the farmers in your area and your constituents, not just hearing from me and Jake and Ben and Alex. So Keaton really works hard with them on how they reach out to y'all, how they contact with y'all, and how they communicate and get connected in y'all's districts with their local elected officials. And finally, that brings me to the job that I get to do. I'm one of the 3 governmental affairs specialists in our office. I mentioned Ben Parker. He handles our federal affairs. And then myself and Jake Matthews, who many of y'all know, we handle our state affairs. Me and Jake get to spend every day during the legislative session meeting with y'all and working with y'all. So it's good to see y'all in our office and in our home office here in Macon. So thank y'all for making the trip. As I kind of begin to talk more about the issues at hand that farmers are facing, we believe it is very important as the Rural Development Council that y'all have a understanding of the issues that farmers are facing right now. The fact of the matter is agriculture is the #1 industry in the state of Georgia, and agriculture is the backbone of the rural community and the rural economy. Without agriculture, you would not have, I'm not going to say all, but I would say most, every community, rural community in the state They're very dependent on agriculture. So I ask that y'all keep that in the forefront of your mind as we go forward today and listen to this discussion that we're going to have. Because we do truly believe that ensuring that agriculture is successful is crucial to the job that y'all are going to do on this council. So let's talk about deer. Many of y'all are familiar with wildlife nuisance, and when most people hear wildlife nuisance, their mind quickly turns to feral hogs. While yes, feral hogs are an issue, and feral hogs have been an issue for many years, the new player on the scene of wildlife nuisance here in the past few years seems to be white-tailed deer. Hogs are an invasive species. Nobody likes them. Nobody wants them. Whether you're a farmer, whether you own a golf course, whether you're an environmentalist, nobody likes a hog. They don't provide any good to the ecosystem in Georgia. They don't provide any good to the farm economy in Georgia. And they're just ugly, in the matter of fact. So there's not much of a benefit of a hog. It is easy to get people on board with eradicating the feral hog. I mean, I don't think you rarely are going to hear opposition to that. That has a pretty stark contrast to white-tailed deer. People like to hunt deer. There's a recreational value involved with white-tailed deer. The state, over the past 50 years, has done a lot of work to maintain a population of white-tailed deer for hunters and tourists and just the general public as a whole. And most importantly, white-tailed deer are regulated by the government. They're the state's the state game animal. However, white-tailed deer have a significant economic burden on the farm economy. Farmers operate on very, very thin profit margins. We have a lot of farmers at this table today. Chairman Dickey, Chairman Perkle, I feel like they could probably directly speak to that. It seems like year after year, the margin gets slimmer and slimmer for farmers. So another thing like deer, they're stacked on top of the many challenges that farmers are facing today already, just makes it a little bit harder and a little bit harder for them to make a profit and for them to continue to do what they do. Like I said, there's a stark contrast to white-tailed deer and to feral hogs, so let's kind of look at that. This issue has seen exponential growth year after year, and it is a widespread across many commodity issues. We're going to hear we have a few quotes thrown up here in a couple slides from farmers, and a lot of farmers will tell you 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, white-tailed deer were not an issue on their farm. They saw them, they enjoyed hunting them, their grandkids enjoyed hunting them, but they weren't inflicting measurable damage to their crop and to their production. Right now, we are seeing significant damage on just about any farm, whether that is a corn and soybean farm, whether that's a fruit and vegetable farm, and the newest one that seems to kind of came about in the past 2 to 3 years is on cotton farms. In talking to researchers, extension specialists, industry leaders, we would hypothesize right now that the greatest economic burden commodity-wise that deer are having an impact on is the cotton crop. And again, we're going to get to that a little bit sooner. So understanding these things, having kind of this framework in mind, we're going to show y'all a few videos, hopefully, and a few pictures, a few quotes from some of our members of what we're hearing, what we've been seeing the past 2 years that has kind of really brought this to our attention. So, this is from a farmer in the middle Georgia area. I think Chairman Hatchett, this is kind of Lawrence County, so your area. I think both of these videos are, but this is through a thermal scope that a lot of farmers use to hunt deer at night. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. This is not illegal. This is permitted work that they are doing, so please do not go try to slap the hand of this farmer. Also, just briefly, before we hit play, I want to point your attention. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, it's kind of hard to see. This is at 1:09 in the morning. Again, just prefacing that. That's a lot of deer. I know most people, and even I myself, don't have a ton of experience looking through these thermal scopes. If you see that tree line in the back, this is not a big field. In talking to the farmer, this is only about a 35-acre field. I sat down and attempted to count the number of deer. I gave up when I hit about 60. So looking at our next picture, Also, I'm not exactly sure the commodity. This is just a row crop farmer. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is. Chairman Perkle says these are peanuts, so I'm going to go with his word. Again, another probably 30, 35, 40 acre field, another 50, 60, 70, 80 deer. And then this, so through this picture in here, this is a good visual of what deer damage looks like, specifically in cotton. We're going to get to some slides on the next page, and the thing to point out is that you don't see anything, and you should be seeing things. So this is a good opportunity to kind of point out what a lot of times the deer damage is that we're talking about. So you see these bigger cotton, this is cotton, you see these bigger cotton plants. That cotton's probably a few weeks old. It's starting to square, put on fruit. But if you look right here in the middle, there's just a gap. And it's really hard to see kind of from the back. But it looks like somebody went through and stuck toothpicks in the ground. You'll hear a lot of farmers, that's the way they'll reference it. And they'll say, yeah, the deer got in there and it looks like toothpicks. What that is when the cotton first breaks ground, it's what's called the cotyledon stage. There's just two little leaves. And it looks like you stuck two leaves on a toothpick and went through the field. The deer will come through and one bite at a time, row after row after row, and they will just take out. And when they bite those cotyledons off at this stage, that cotton plant's done. There is no more production. There is no more fruiting. That plant has to be replanted. It's killed. So this is just a good demonstration of what exactly we're talking about most of the time we deal with deer damage. And here's just a couple pictures. Again, the pictures are not very thrilling, so kind of direct your attention more at the caption because the pictures don't show anything. And that is the concern, is there's nothing there to see. So that's an entire 38-acre field of toothpicks where we had near perfect stand, one farmer said. Second trip across, nothing left. What that's kind of referring to is that farmer not only planted and had his entire crop wiped out, that farmer came back and planted again. So he spent double the cost. He bought double the seed, spent double the diesel, double the in-furrow application. All of his input costs were doubled at planting, and there's still nothing there. Top right, definitely the worst I've had in 5 years. Again, showing this has been an issue that is relatively new to a lot of row crop farmers. And this is the past five-ish years they've started seeing this kind of damage. In the bottom one we threw in there, we didn't have a picture to go with it, but it's kind of a good visual of maybe the best numbers per se we can stick to this. Lost 50% of a 9-acre field in town. Can't afford to put an electric fence around 40 different fields. So again, that's the struggle a lot of these farmers are facing. They don't have a good solution to this. So briefly want to hit on this, kind of what we've been doing here at Farm Bureau. A lot of people have asked us this offseason, what's your priority? We were at the Ag Issue Summit last Tuesday, and got that question from a lot of y'all, a lot of the elected officials that were there. What's Farm Bureau been working on? Like, what are y'all coming to us with next year? And we get a lot of chuckles when we say deer. But this has been a lot of our summer right now, and that's also happens to do with the summer is kind of when deer damage is the biggest issue for agriculture. But one of the things we've been doing is facilitating farmers' input and reports of deer impact across the state. We have a lot of different meetings that go on with these commodity advisory committees, and a lot of those meetings continually brought up is deer nuisance, deer damage. A lot of our county meetings around the state that we get to travel to, we're hearing whether it's northeast Georgia, southwest Georgia, deer damage. Working with DNR to make deer depredation permits more efficient for farmers. This is the permit that I was talking about, these two guys, these thermal scopes we're utilizing. They were acting within the law, so again, do not be concerned in that regard. This depredation permit simply allows these farmers to alleviate their deer problem they have by using whatever means possible, if to an extent. I mean, they can use thermal scopes. They can hunt the deer at night, which is typically out of regulation during normal hunting season. So farmers are allowed to utilize this deer depredation permit during season, outside of deer season typically, to help try to relieve some of that pressure. There's some struggles to that. That's kind of, like I mentioned, the 1:09 a.m. at the bottom. It's tough to ask a farmer to farm all day and go shoot deer all night. That's kind of just simply it's hard to ask anybody to work 24 hours a day. And that's kind of one of the challenges farmers feel like they're facing right now. They can spray pesticides, they can pick cotton, they can do a lot of work during the day, but if they're having to work all day and then turn around and go stay up all night and shoot deer, that's really hard on them. And then funding research and collaborating with UGA to understand research needs. University of Georgia has a professor in the Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources, Dr. Minjak, and he has done a little bit of work on this issue back in 2016. And then also Dr. Laura Perry Johnson with the UGA College of Ag. She is the Associate Professor for Extension. We've had a lot of conversations with them as well as other extension specialists on how can we fund research similar to what Dr. Minjak did years ago. He actually just recently retired. But also, how can we collaborate with them and collaborate with their extension agents to try to address this very prevalent need that farmers are facing? We're fortunate at Farm Bureau, our members, they really prioritize extension, and they really prioritize the work that extension does. And we actually have a system where we're allowed to give research grants from our public policy department, and that's kind of oversaw by our ag program guys that I mentioned, Rainer Churchwell and Jeremy Taylor. Every year they spend time selecting research projects that are going on throughout the state and rewarding them with grants. So that's something that we've been able to partner with UGA in a way that we've kind of been able to work to address this issue. Before I hit the next slide, I think pictures say 1,000 words, so let's look at this picture too real quick. This is a good depiction of later stage damage to cotton. So I talk about that cotyledon stage when cotton first breaks dirt and how the damage is total. Well, so this cotton plant right here is actually longer, like much older. You can see it's starting to put on cotton bolls. It's produced a lot of fruit. You can see a few of the squares there, which will soon to be cotton bolls. But if you can see, my clicker is not showing up super well, but if you can see kind of right there at the top on the left side of that plant, there's a cotton boll that looks like it's been busted in half. Something we've actually heard the past year or two from farmers. This time of year when you start getting like late August, September, plants are fruiting and it's dry, we're actually seeing deer biting into these bowls because the inside of cotton bolls when they're at this stage are slimy and moist and really wet. We've had a lot of ag consultants and farm consultants and farmers come to us and say they're starting to have an issue with what they predict is deer actually busting open these bowls and hurting the fruit of the plant to just get moisture out of it to find a little bit of water. Again, ever-evolving problem. It's interesting how dynamic it's becoming. But again, this affects yields, this affects those profits. And it's hard for a farmer when they spend all year fertilizing this plant to come out there and see fruit laying on the ground that a deer's walked around at midnight and busted open. And so now, again, before we talk about things on the left, picture on the right, quote from one of our farmers, the edges of this entire farm get eaten each year at least a boom's width, and in the very back it's worse. If you see this picture on the right where it looks like the farmer forgot to plant, he didn't. Deer have just came in and ate that much of his crop. That picture should be as green as it is on the left all the way to that tree line, but deer have had their way. So this is kind of the direction that we as Farm Bureau have kind of been, our discussions has been leading. And this is kind of where I would like, at the end, I hope I've saved enough time for questions to have y'all kind of discuss a little bit, but like where the council leads with this issue. And these are just a few of the things we've talked about and that we've talked through with some of our ag friends and other ag groups, but more research. These pictures, I think, help tell the story. But people that don't get the chance to see these pictures, they speak best in dollars. And one of the things that we've been working really hard with and trying to help find is research, whether that's through the University of Georgia, extension research and whatnot that you may have, that will fund, or that we can help fund, that kind of shows the economic impact of the white-tailed deer on farming, but not just on direct farm production, but what does that do to the entire farm economy and the economic impact that could have on a whole community? When you're talking about small towns across southwest Georgia where their main form of revenue is row crop farming, if you're having farmers obtain substantial damage by deer, that's affecting the whole rural economy in that community. So how can we really quantify these numbers and be able to tell this story that we're telling through pictures today through numbers, because I think everybody understands we always speak best in dollars. Everybody understands a dollar. Wildlife depredation permits, I mentioned that program that DNR offers to farmers. It's a good program. We do not believe it's a bad program. We like it. We think it's a tool that farmers can utilize, and where we stand right now, we think it's probably the best tool that's out there. But we always want to see how we can increase the effectiveness. How can we make it more efficient for our farmers to be able to use it, utilize that program? So we're constantly asking them, do you have a depredation permit? Are you using the depredation permit you have? What are some barriers to this depredation permit that you have? And trying to kind of get their input to see how we can make that more efficient. And then most importantly, this is where y'all come in, like I guess y'all come involved in all of these, but we just put legislative intervention because we believe that the General Assembly can assist in this. That's kind of where we are in this. And that's why we're excited about the discussion today is as we go forward, we would like to hear y'all's input from farmers, from people that do live in rural communities and come from rural communities. What can the General Assembly do to help alleviate this issue? Because we do believe that y'all have a role in this, and there's a way that y'all can help the farm economy and help your constituents. We're looking for the best way. So with that, I will open it up for questions for myself. I will do my best to answer any questions that y'all may have. Also, just would like to open the floor up for y'all to discuss among council members.
Thank you, Adam. That was a great presentation. And in Southwest Georgia, we have been holding hearings with the Department of Natural Resources. And I shocked them at the last one when they thought maybe 10 farmers were going to show up about the deer and the feral hogs, and we had over 100 individuals. It is a great problem that we have got to address, and farmers are going to have to take on a new responsibility too when they rent their farms in the fall for hunting. They're going to have to lay out some new type of guidelines and not wait till the spring to start hunting the deer and when the planting season is there. We're going to have to do a better education, and I hope Farm Bureau will join us in doing this as we move forward. Do we have any questions? Yes, Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bellflower, for putting a presentation together on a real problem that we have. I would encourage you, because those pictures that videos you shared is not something that is isolated. Every single field that I drive around at night when I'm checking irrigation looks just like that. Every daggum field. And I mean, it's the economic. So as part of our research effort as a member of Farm Bureau, hopefully not just showing the economic damage from this problem, because, I could tell you there's a problem. Every farmer you talk to will tell you there's a problem. It's important that we put a number to it to get the general public to understand. But I want to make sure that we're looking at research. How can we actually do something? It's amazing that during deer season, if I turn my head too quick and I'm hunting, the deer will see me and run away. And, there's deer hunters that will, honest to God, they'll do this. They'll put their hunting clothes in a special bag that is scent free. And when they get to the woods, they'll take off their regular clothes and put on these scent free because they don't want even detergent on their clothes to scare the deer off. And yet at night, my God, they just come out and go crazy. If there's something we could spray on the crop, research that we could spray. I know I've heard some people try with varied success. They'll go by the barber shop. I was telling Chairman Hatchett, they'll go by the barber shop and get some hair and sprinkle around the edge of the field to see if they can keep the deer out. So our research, it is important to fund the educational effort to let the general public know, but if we can direct some of the research to actual things we can do, because it really is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Lynn Smith.
Presentation, so thank you for that. So I always come to how do you get the votes if you bring a bill to us in the General Assembly, and I think you've explained very well, and there's definitely buy-in here. So one of my suggestions is how do you reach the majority of people now who have the voice in the General Assembly to get them to understand the problem? One of them is a lot of people who live outside of the actual urban dwellers. The deer eat up everything they plant. So there's sympathy there from a lot of people who are not just rural. But in the end, it will be an effective campaign once we get to the General Assembly of how to make people understand this if we've got to have a vote.
Go ahead.
I think if people can't understand that don't have a deer problem when we bring out how much it's costing the insurance premium, which is it really hits everybody. It's a big economic pack on everybody. I don't know how much y'all have to spend out on paying for claims, but if we could get all the insurance companies to report how much deer are costing all the people in Georgia, because the insurance premium goes up, it might get some other people's attention too. Not that I don't think farmers have a big thing, because I've got a cornfield in the back of my house, and I've got a herd of deer. I must have counted 50 running through my front yard the other day.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's a problem. But one thing too, when you rent to all these people to hunting rights, they only want to kill trophy deer. That if they don't. And a couple of years ago, we passed a bill that certain counties, they wanted to be trophy counties. I don't know if they're still there or not. You just couldn't kill anything but a trophy deer in some counties. I don't know how long that lasted. And we need to, and feeding deer over bait, maybe we need to stop doing that.
Thank you. Representative Dickey.
Around the edges, but in the last 2 years, it's just exploded. And I think those pictures show you, I lost a whole orchard last year, 3,000 trees, totally, just like those two pics in that cotton field. $20,000-$30,000 lost. We put a $20,000 fence around the field this year, and now we're growing peach trees in there. But that's the kind of damage. And it's just exploded in the last few years. We always used to absorb a little loss, but now it's just devastating. And some areas are just you just can't farm there anymore with the level of deer there. So it's gotten to a level very quickly, in my opinion, just in the last year or two. And it's we got to find a solution for it, or it's a worry about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it interesting, that was one of the first things I was involved in when I came to the legislature in 2003. That was the deer dog controversy. And we had some folk were doing a good job of killing, but we had a lot of problems with urban voters. And I think that we need to address from a little different direction. Urban housewives will be glad to get involved if you look at their flower gardens, because one thing about those deer, they do love lilies, and they will wipe it out. My wife only plants deer-resistant plants anymore because they walk right in, nothing scares them away. And from the feral hogs, the hog catchers in my county just almost quit because they couldn't even give the hogs away anymore. It used to be a good market for giving them away. They can't even give them away. They're so plentiful. But what's the name of that big chemical company? Monsanto. They have invented something for everything else. I think they'll be growing seeds in suspension one day soon. It looks like they ought to be able to have something that would be deer resistant, that you could spray, and God knows nobody wants to hear about another spraying, but that beats having nothing.
Chairman Jaspers.
What some of y'all have said in North Georgia, grapes, as Robert Dickey said, you know, vineyards, it's destructive. You go to the experiment station that we have in Blairsville, they've got I don't know what that fence is, but it's 10 feet tall just to protect the fruit from deer predation. But also, you know, on the other side, you look at the environmental damage. You go through the woods in North Georgia, there's nothing there. I mean, the entire understory is gone. And, you know, I'd be curious to see what you brought up, Adam, a 2016 report by Dr. Minjak. I think we need to look at that. I'd like to see that and see what his recommendations were. It's probably just multiply it times 5 to get where we're at today. But, you know, sometimes we kind of like to rehash the same old ground. But, you know, he's a world authority on all this. I'd like to see what he recommended.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Adam, the council will be making recommendations as to what we need to be doing, and we would certainly like to call on you to be one of our individuals to help us sort through some of the recommendations of this council. We've got some grave issues before us, and the rural boys and ladies were being called Bambi killers. And we went through that process for a while there, but it is my understanding that Fulton County is probably the heaviest deer, has the largest deer population now in the state. So maybe things will have changed in the way that we're looking at things. Anything that you'd like to further say?
Yes, sir. I'll thank y'all for y'all's input, and just a couple of thoughts that I'll leave y'all with kind of as I heard y'all's questions and comments. You talk about market-based solutions, like industry coming out with some kind of deterrent. We like to think there's hope in this area. LSU actually recently patented a product that was for feral hogs, and it obviously has to go through the EPA regulatory system that allows something like this to reach market. But LSU recently patented a feral hog deterrent in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if y'all might have seen that in the news. So I think that's a viable route to pursue. One of the things that state deer biologist Charlie Kilmaster, we've had a lot of conversations with him, and he always says that he believes, and he being the expert, I like to kind of default to think he has a good idea. He believes the goal here should be to get the total aggregate number of deer killed in the state of Georgia increased. And I think a lot of the ideas y'all threw around kind of hit at that, whether that's negotiating your land leases or negotiating hunting leases, requiring farmers requiring people that lease for hunting rights to kill a certain number of deer to maintain their lease. That was kind of an idea that we had brought up and something that I know I personally recommended to some farmers that lease their land. So whether you negotiate that private contract with the people that have the hunting rights, whatever that may look like. But the goal here, I think, moving forward is how do we incentivize the hunter to kill more deer as a whole. But thank y'all for y'all's time. If I don't have your number, your contact information, I'd love to share it with you. I'll be around all day, and also we'll be around a little bit tomorrow. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Adam. We really appreciate that. Before we take a little 5-minute break here, I'm going to call on Chairman Smith she wants to do a little update here for us right quick.
First of all, I want to thank the members of the General Assembly for passing the natural disaster bill that is supposed to provide property relief to our citizens of our state. I didn't realize that we might be facing a hurricane very quickly, so I talked to Blake Travis and led council, and I feel more comfortable reading what he sent to me, but there is something we can do preemptive to anything that's coming up. Here's what he told me. I have not been receiving inquiries related to House Bill 311 yet. As far as preemptive, it appears there is plenty of preemptive work that local emergency management directors could be doing to get ready for the eventual implementation of House Bill 311. The governing authorities cannot pass the required resolution or ordinance with respect to a relief grant unless and until the conditions are met. For example, that the federal government has declared a natural disaster and activating thus the local emergency management director and how to assess the applicable damage, and other to report to the local governing authority. So there are likely things the jurisdiction can do. This is either city, county, or school systems who are the ones that tax us. So there are likely things the jurisdiction can do to prepare for this eventuality happening. But the jurisdiction cannot preemptively approve grants. They must wait for the damage report from the local emergency management director. So the attention would be on the local emergency management director's rules that he or she has established in response to House Bill 311. And so all counties have this emergency management director. That's why that became the go-to person in determining property damage. And those who've lived through extreme natural disasters, as my county, you're stunned when the disaster occurs, and you want relief to happen immediately. But as to property tax relief, it can't happen until after the disaster. So I'll send you a copy of this, Gerald, so you'll have it on file.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We've been joined by one other member of the council, Representative Blackman. If you would just sort of introduce yourself as the others have done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shaw Blackman, I represent the 146, which is down in Houston County, just a few short miles away, and I apologize for my tardiness.
I'll write you an excuse. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. The restrooms are up the stairs here to the left. So we'll take about a 5-minute break, and there's water and things over here for you to drink. Please take his, if I could have your attention, we're going to go ahead and get started again. We want to stay on schedule. So Dr. David Bridges, if you'll make your way to the podium. Hey! That's all right. Is it?
Everything's all right?
Yeah. So it'll get us some rain. Okay. Let's go ahead and be seated and give Dr. Bridges your attention, please. Give Dr. Bridges your attention. If you'll go ahead and be seated. Usually my voice is strong enough to...
We're getting ready to get started. If everybody would take your seat, we're getting ready to get started. Thank you. Dr. Bridges.
Dominic, was that you whistle? Yes, sir. I kind of thought my wife had joined the crowd. That's what she does. She can call the kids from miles away. All right. Well, we'll get started. I first of all, appreciate the opportunity to speak. And we'll get right with it, try to stay on time. I've been asked to cover a couple of issues. So what I've done is internally allocated 10 minutes to give you a 5-year summary on what the Center for Rural Prosperity has accomplished. Spend 10 minutes talking about a specific issue related to the gap between revenue and potential expenses for infrastructure, and then leave 10 minutes for questions. So we'll move right ahead. I'd like others to thank the late David Ralston for his creation of this council and his focus and interest on rural affairs. And I think the council has done some good work in the last few years, and I hope that will continue under the leadership of Speaker Burns. It has been because of this group that several pieces of great legislation have been passed that have made it possible for us to do what has been done. Prior to the creation of the center, we spent 2 or 3 years doing some planning work. This body recommended legislation in the fall of 17, and then in 18, House Bill 951 was passed, providing statewide authority for the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation to work across the state in ways to help increase prosperity and economic impact. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. You can go back the last few years. All my presentations are recorded. They're on the website. You can go back and look at them, or if you have questions, feel free to ask me. This all kind of got started a few years ago between me and Charlie Hazlitt when he published a paper where he asserted that literally rural Georgia is dying. And Charlie and I have worked together on several things, and he couldn't be here today, but he continues to work. But one of the points that we've raised repeatedly is that just because counties depopulate doesn't mean that we don't have ongoing expense and obligation on behalf of the state. We rise together as 159 counties. We fail as 159 counties. There's no different. The most common question I've been asked the last few months is, what is the condition on the ground? And is rural Georgia, the situation in rural Georgia, improving? And here's the best way I know how to describe it. I don't know. But Charlie and I have spent a fair amount of time looking at things, and I would tell you, I don't want to be the provider of bad information. But look, we've looked at 12 parameters of prosperity and quality of life in rural Georgia, and I will tell you, we really can't find a single really strong positive indicator that condition has improved. So how do we work? Well, we advocate for rural Georgia. We do other things. We try to coordinate with other agencies. We manage resources, provide human capital through students and other things, and probably spend most of our time intensively managing projects in small rural communities that cannot manage them for themselves. We've learned over the years that there's a limited amount of inspiring leadership in rural Georgia. There's a lot of confusion about what programs are available at the local, federal, and state level. People don't know exactly what to do. County governments and local communities, their situation is very strained, and I'm not going to belabor that right now. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the last one really ought to be the first one. Workforce issues are a serious problem everywhere in this state. The nature of that workforce shortage is different depending on where you are, but the workforce shortage is a serious problem. So we've kind of learned over the past 5 years as we've worked, if you want to get something done, just do it. Go jumpstart the project. Most people will come around. Go out and find the opportunities. Identify who's going to be the beneficiary and work with those beneficiaries to champion the project and try to get the local and state authorities involved in solving. The private sector is very important. We have to work with the private sector in many cases to get things done, and that's sort of the essence of how we work. I'm not going to read this slide to you. There's a lot on it. But we focus on doing, not facilitating, but doing. Infrastructure planning has become a major part of what we do, because I will tell you, and I will show you some slides as I go through, that the infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, bridges, etc., in much of rural Georgia is fully depreciated. It is unfunded depreciation. And without that infrastructure, we have little hope to restore prosperity and economic development. Sometimes we fund the gap. If there's something, if there's a project that's going to cost $500,000 and there's $400,000 available, the question is, where's the last $100,000 come from? Sometimes that's us. We fund it. We write grants for people, and frankly, we do a few projects that I would call disruptive projects. They're projects to disrupt the status quo and try to demonstrate that if we do things differently, we can be successful. We don't do a few things. We don't do leadership development. There are ample opportunities in the state. I could go down the list. They're well established. Fannin, Archway, EMC, Georgia Power, there's Leadership Georgia. There are all kinds of leadership programs. We don't do those. We don't charge for services. We don't expect too much, because a lot of these small communities that we work in simply don't have the staff to do a great deal. We've historically stayed out of housing because there are those who are laser focused on housing, and so we don't typically do that. We've stayed out of broadband. There's a lot of resources out there and a lot of expertise and a lot of complicating factors, and we've just generally stayed out of it. We don't do education per se, but we do workforce. So what's happened over the past 5 years? We've completed more than 50 projects across the state that individually impact about 69 counties, and I would tell you that more than 140 counties in the state have benefited directly or indirectly from our work. We're trying to wrap up managing 3 CARES projects, ARP projects. That's been a very trying process. Scott Blunt lost his hair over it. You see him sitting there on the front row. Managing ARP has caused him to lose his hair. I lost mine for other reasons. We published a lot of publications to advocate for and raise the awareness of the assets and the good things that are happening in rural Georgia. Impact. This is a summary slide over 5 years. We've been told that we should use our funds to leverage other available local, state, and federal funds. We think we've done a really good job of that. You see in this third column there where it says CRPI, we've invested $2.4 million directly into projects around the state over the past 5 years that have been associated with $7 million of additional state funding, about $1.5 million local funds, $78 million of federal funds, and over $300 million of private funds. A total investment of $405 million again, associated with expenditure of $2.4 million of state money directly. That's a leverage factor of about 170 to 1. That's a pretty good leverage. Another way of putting it for the farmers in the group, I'm one of them, is there's an old saying, you can plant a little seed and you can produce a crop. And if you produce enough crop, you can produce a few bales. And we think a $2.5 million investment towards $405 million overall, pretty good return on investment. One example, one of the first projects we did was a feasibility study and an economic impact study for the relocation of parts of Harrison Poultry Company's business from Barrow County to Tolliver County, the state's smallest county. They had sought funding earlier and had been denied, and we went in and worked with Harrison Poultry, Tolliver County Development Authority, did a feasibility study and an economic impact study. As a result, they received a $1 million One Georgia grant, $18 million in tax credits, and we checked a few weeks ago, and that's resulted in 50 new jobs in Tolliver County. I know 50 jobs doesn't sound like much, folks, but in Tolliver County, 50 jobs is huge. 266 new additional jobs in Barrow County because Harrison Poultry is now running a second shift at their Bethlehem processing plant. Chicken houses and poultry houses are being built in 5 East Georgia counties, and that impact is going to be felt soon. We pulled the sales tax returns for Tolliver County, and like everybody else during the pandemic, their revenue went down, sales tax revenue went down, but if you look at 2023 going forward, their sales tax revenue is up about 20%. And the mayor of Crawfordville called me about 2 years ago and said, there are a lot of people around here that thank y'all for what you did to help us get that feed mill and trucking operation moved here into Tolliver County, but the people of Tolliver County are most excited because we got a Dollar General out of it. And they call it the Mall of Crawfordville. Another project we've invested a lot of time and effort in, and it has been a real struggle, continues to be a struggle, but with that was to work with the Miller County Development Authority, health facilities around the state, our institution and livestock producers to purchase a slaughterhouse and processing plant in Miller County that was about to close. Our goals were to mitigate the economic impact of a closure, provide local livestock producers an opportunity to slaughter animals and sell retail meats, and we've done that. Service health care, we have a contract with one of the long-term health care providers in the state, providing pork to them. And hopefully our last goal, which we're working on right now, and Casey Bean will be as happy or happier than I am, when we work with the Development Authority in the near future, we hope to transfer that facility back to private ownership and restore it as an employer and a tax generating entity in the county. We were asked this past year, and we have done it, and I have a report, the first year report. I'm not handing it out. It's too lengthy. It's very cumbersome. If you don't know anything about the project, it's actually hard to read. But it was $5 million put into the amended budget in the center's budget for distribution as state match funds for a $65 million EDA grant to Georgia Tech. And that money was distributed in May to the collaborators, Technical College System of Georgia, the Russell Institute at UGA, Georgia Cyber Center, the 21st Century Project, which is located here in Central Georgia, and the Southwest Georgia Regional Commission. So those funds are out and beginning to work in the area of artificial intelligence and advanced manufacturing across the state. We've kicked off a whole new series of projects. Won't go through them. They're in the report. You can look at them. But we've got a lot going on right now for 23 and 24. One of our signature projects that we started really about 2 years ago, we laid it on the table for a little while due to COVID. We picked it back up and we're running full steam with it now. It was a collaborative project with the Georgia Foresters Association, Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, the Georgia Forestry Commission, DNR, and the private forest industry. Georgia Forestry is the largest forest industry, largest forest state in the U.S., and it is largely based on southern yellow pine timber. And we simply have to find new ways to increase the value of southern yellow pine timber. Mass timber is a way to do that. And so this is a project that we have taken on as a center to create a facility and a program in the state of Georgia in which we can educate architects, engineers, contractors, and others about the use of novel timber products as opposed to concrete and steel. And we just think this is something that has to be done. When you look at the size and magnitude of the forest products industry in the state, we've got to do something to promote that. So that's kind of what we have done. And now I wanted to talk to you about the current state of affairs and something that I believe is a potential straw that can break the camel's back in much of rural Georgia. And that is the relationship between population change, revenue, and cost. And this is a real issue that has been in existence for a while, and it is now reaching sort of the end of the rope, so to speak. I showed this picture before. We're sitting here packing our finger on the table saying, what do we do? What do we do? Meanwhile, the situation continues to get worse. So I talked to you a little bit about the primary indicators. Per capita income is not good. We have a very high percentage, the highest percentage probably ever, of persons in the lower quartile of national per capita income. Population's declining, we're aging, just going down the list, you can read it. And I'm very concerned that we're reaching a point where the demise of many of our smallest rural counties is going to jeopardize our agricultural and forest interest in the state. So let's talk about population right quick. I know David Tanner's talked about it. A lot of people talk. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but this is a map of the population of the state. And you got Fulton County with over 1 million people, and then you got Tolliver County up in the eastern part of the state with 1,500. All of those counties that are in white, they're less than 15,000 people. Now, you've heard that before, but here's what I'm here to remind you of today. You look at this map on the right. The ones that are in blue had an increase in population from 2010 to 2020. The ones that are in pink or red, ever how you see that color, have remained relatively stable, up or down less than 1%. The ones in gray have declined. So if you look at the 53 counties that have a population of less than 15,000 people, 44 of those 53 counties saw a population decline. 21 of the ones from 15 to 50 did. So we got a total of 65 counties with a population of less than 50,000 that saw a population decline over the past 10 years. Now, you've heard that before. But here's the more shocking point that I want you to hear. 159 counties in the state grew older. Okay? If you didn't know that, it's been out there everywhere. That means the percentage of the population from 65 to 84 increased in every county in the state, and actually pretty much across the country. What you haven't heard is a lot of talk about what happened to the population of people 18 and under. 51 of Georgia's 53 smallest counties had a decline in population of people under 18 years of age. Okay? Now you say, well, this has been going on for a while. Well, yes, it has. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how that impacts money, because money, money's everything. I'm going to skip over that. We don't even need to talk about that. Let's talk about revenue. So we decided to go back and look 40 years. We picked 91, 01, 11, and 21, 1 year after each of the recent censuses. And we looked at tax digest in the 53 smallest counties in the state. We looked at tax revenue, and we looked at total revenue to see what has happened. So here's what has happened. The column labeled digest. Out of those 53 smallest counties, we had 9 counties whose tax digest did not even double. Now think about it. 40 years, the tax digest did not double. We had 35 that increased 2 to 3-fold, 5 3 to 4-fold, and 4 to 5-fold. Average of 2.6. Over 40 plus years, the tax digest increase of 2.6, a multiplier of 2.6. And we look at taxes, and this is a mess when you start trying to look at tax. You know, so this is basically property tax and the 1% sales tax return, and we left out a lot of other stuff because those were comparing apples to apples. And in those same 53 counties, you see the distribution of change with an average multiplier of 4.5 over 40 years. And you say, well, that's pretty good. Went up 4.5. That's a combination, if you root into the numbers, 2 things. Increased property tax rates, increased evaluations, and in a few cases, increased sales tax. You look at total revenue, which I don't recommend you do, because when you start looking at total revenue, you find intergovernmental transfers, grants, forfeitures, seizures, all kinds of stuff that is not comparable from county to county. But what you see there is, depending on how you want to look at it, a 2.5 to 4.5-fold increase in revenue to those 53 smallest counties. So what's happened to cost? So I went to 3 of the largest civil engineering firms in the state, and I said, I want you to help me pick 8 or 10 proxies for cost of infrastructure maintenance. They said, yeah, we can do that. So we came up with asphalt, I don't know whether you can read them, but from left to right on the bottom, asphalt, graded aggregate base, curb and gutter, 18-inch concrete pipe, 24-inch concrete pipe, galvanized guardrails, 8-inch sewer pipe, 6-inch water lines. Went to DOT, they have this huge database on expense, and so do these civil engineering firms. And we looked at the average cost over those same 40 years. Okay? So if you just take the numbers from 91 to 21, it looks like there's been an increase of about 3-fold, 3.5-fold. That's a very conservative number, I will tell you. The way the numbers came out is very conservative. But then when we started looking at what's happened since 21, and y'all know what's happened since 21, hyperinflation. We estimated, with the assistance of several engineering and pricing firms, that the prices of these proxies had increased by about 5-fold, 4.9. On the lower bound estimate, the upper bound estimate was 6.3. I will tell you today that didn't tell the story. There are 6 sewer infrastructure projects in the state that were designed in 21 and put out to bid and have come back in from bid within the last 3 months. And from 21 to 23 today, the estimated cost has risen by a factor of 2.8. So you put 2.8 on top of 5 to 6, and you're looking at what? 8 to 10% increase in infrastructure maintenance cost. You see where I'm going with this? So we talk about 4-fold increase in tax revenue, but we got an 8 or 9-fold increase in infrastructure cost. So you know, you compare those two, it's not a good story. So you got about 30 of the 53 smallest counties in the state who I will tell you, and this is not hyperbole, their water and sewer and bridge and road infrastructure is highly depreciated. It's unfunded, deferred maintenance. It hasn't been fixed in the past 40 years. Most of those sewer and water systems were built in the 40s and 50s, few in the 60s. We haven't fixed them for the past 40 years because we couldn't afford to. So what do you think is going to happen now? There's no chance. There is no chance to fix this. So we have said for years, and others have said, y'all have heard, you have said, that without education and workforce, health care, and economic opportunity, there can be no prosperity in a rural community. And I think that's right. That's what we focus on. Those situations are not improving. But those situations, education, health care, and economic opportunity, are dependent on what? Infrastructure. So here's my message to you. It's a single message. I'm not preaching about anything else today. I'm telling you that unless we figure out a way to deal with the crumbling infrastructure in our smallest populated, least populated counties, there's not going to be any investment. Okay? There's no sewer lines, there's no water, there's no roads, there's no bridges, et cetera, schools, et cetera. There will be no investment. And without investment, there will be no inbound movement of people. And inbound movement of people is what is essential if we're going to have prosperity in these rural communities. Now, I know that's not a pleasant presentation to you, but that's reality. And I've talked with Chairman Green about it a number of times. I've talked with Chief of Staff England and others. I'm running into more and more and more county leaders, county commission chairmen, county administrators, et cetera, who are saying, we see no way out. We can't fix our roads. Our water systems are inadequate for the population we have, and they certainly won't support growth. Sewer systems are in the same condition. And so why did I talk about population at the start? And then I'm going to stop and give y'all plenty of time for questions. Over the past 40 years, the tax base of our rural counties has become increasingly narrower. Okay? We had what I call the, forgive me for saying it, the Walmart era. Started back in the 70s and 80s. Retail got consolidated. Small retail businesses across rural Georgia closed their doors. Those businesses now have been closed long enough that people are actually tearing the buildings down on Main Street and selling the bricks. Not because the bricks are all that valuable, but because they don't want to pay tax on the buildings. And then we had the not so pleasant great sucking sound of NAFTA as predicted by Ross Perot. Every rural community in Georgia had some sort of textile plant. They're non-existent. There's no small manufacturing. You go in industrial parks around South Georgia, and there are buildings that are homes to pigeons. They're just falling in. There's nobody there. They're taking them down. That's going to further reduce the tax base. So we've reached a point where residential homes are the primary source of ad valorem taxes in a community. And I just showed you that we're all getting older. I'm part of that group. You know, it's a fact of life. We all die sooner or later. Most of these counties are populated by people that's going to be sooner than later. You know, it's going to be people like me. There are no young people to reinforce the population. And so what happens is the residential real estate market depreciates and declines. That's going to be another hit on the tax base. So I urge you to think about infrastructure. And can we fix it all? No, probably not. That's the reality. Do we need to fix some of it? Yes. Or we're not going to have an opportunity. So that's my message to you today. It's a narrow one. It's not a great message, but we have to figure out something to do. And I don't know exactly what to tell you. I have people who tell me every day we don't know what to do. I can tell you some things we don't need to do. What we've been doing. Because it hasn't been working. And it's getting worse. So I'll close with that. Chairman Green, Chairman Jackson, and
thank you, Dr. Bridges. We do have some questions. We have the chair of our Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Blackman.
Thank you, Chairman Green. Could probably ask this offline, David, but is there a way when you drill through this, you know, we have adjusted the collection regarding sales tax with facilitator and with TAVT. Is there any way to take a look at what, may have changed over the last decade regarding that? I know it's small. I know we're talking about rural Georgia. Size of these counties are small, but it's based on zip code and not at, of residency versus, basically where place of purchase. I know it's going to be a small number, but is there a way to drill down into those numbers, or have you seen what those might look like over time?
I will tell you, this, just doing this kind of high-level look was challenging. I think we can do that. I think if we work together with some other folks, Department of Revenue, maybe Department of Community Affairs on tax credit issues and other things, Carl Vinson Institute, we can all, the tax tables, if y'all have never had if you ever have any trouble sleeping at night, pull up the Department of Revenue tax tables and start going through them county by county and look at all the categories, you know what I'm talking about. It's just massive, and it's hard to get, it changes with time, the way it's reported. County by county, it varies because of a variety of things. It's just really hard to get a really granular look at what's going on. But I think it's probably something we need to do. I didn't drill that deep in this. I was looking to make the big point that the gap between revenue and cost.
Oh yeah, point well taken for sure.
Is huge. But if you would like for us to work on some of that, we'll find. We got some partners. I use Department of Revenue data in this. I use CVIOG data in this. I got some data from Georgia State, and try to merge it all together to fill the gaps and whatever. We'd be happy to look at some specific issues if you'd like for us to do that.
Well, we'll talk about it offline,
Okay.
David. I just thought maybe as you're sifting through some of this, there might have been some breakouts that weren't, necessarily covered here today. But thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation.
Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Bridges. I kind of wish you'd have brought some solutions to the problem that you illuminated, and it is true. It's a lot easier to generate support for the AI and the high technology slide that you put. Those are sexy as you might put. Water infrastructure is not, but it is exceedingly important. Natural gas pipelines. We're in Southwest Georgia, South Georgia. We've run out of capacity down there. So it extends just beyond water and sewer to also include natural gas. Is a huge problem that we don't have the infrastructure for, and it's not like it's kind of like your kids when they were small. Left to their own devices, and you give them a chance to eat broccoli or a Hershey bar. Which one they're going to go with? They're going to go with a Hershey bar because it's immediate. But the adult in the room has got to say, we also need substance. We need to eat substantively. I also don't have the solution. I thank you for bringing it out that we, maybe there's somebody in this room that has out-of-box thinking to see the problem you have outlined, because the return on investment is not next year. It's when you're looking at the infrastructure investments, when we look in Department of Transportation, it's decades out. So a lot of our counties, and you don't solve the problem by additional taxes on the citizenry. If you go to the Department of Revenue website and you look at what we are paying on property tax, I'm already paying one of the highest rates in the state of Georgia. And we're just keeping the lights on in our area. So, I don't think the solution is adding more to the burden of the taxpayer there, but I don't have the solution. I wish you had it.
Well, and I've looked at a few things. we've got some examples of things that we think could be done, and I can share them with you. On infrastructure, I will tell you, I think one of the things that has been a challenge and is increasingly a challenge and has been a serious problem in the last 24 months is we do not have a structure in place that allows the state to gain the advantage of scale. Now, this goes back to something that we've all talked about before, and let me preface what I'm about to say once again. I recognize, realize, and appreciate the fact that it is an absolute non-starter to talk about consolidating counties. Got it, okay? But there's no reason why we can't function as something less than 159 counties. And so, you know, you look at the cost now to fix sewer and water problems is just astronomical. And so when we put out grants, and I saw DCA's list of block development grants, I think it was yesterday, and they've ticked up in amount, and that really helps. You put those grants out on the street, a lot of these communities do not have the resources and the capacity to deal with the compliance work, the engineering, to the letting of the bid, you know, it's just whatever. So they all go out, you know, you do 50 of them or whatever in small communities, and immediately all 50 communities that get one scramble to find an engineering firm. They put out an RFQ, and all of a sudden there's 50 new projects on the street, and the engineers all bid against one another, and that makes the price go up. And then a few months later, you got design work done, if you're lucky, and you put out another RFP for construction work. And then they all bid against one another. So there's no scale there. And the smallest always lose, because contractors look at the bigger jobs where they can make the most money and have the least mobilization cost, and they're not interested in doing the smaller ones. And so if we could figure out a way to achieve some economy of scale in the management, the engineering, and the construction work, I think we could save some money and get more done, and have a more consistent and better product than we're often getting with these very small communities that just don't have the staff and the manpower and the whatever. So that's one suggestion, Representative Perkle, that might help us in regards to that, is to achieve some economy of scale, which we're not. The other thing I will tell you is the last 6 months have been almost like entering a new world. As I've traveled and talked with county administrators, I've talked with county commissions, mayors, etc. There are other cost burdens that are now, because of just hyperinflation we've experienced, that many of these counties are just not equipped to deal with. For example, I've had numerous ones tell me, why is my casualty and property insurance, liability insurance doubled? And I go, yeah. I said, well, that truck you bought for your water department 5 years ago, you paid $30,000 for, now $70,000. And that block building that you're insuring that was built for $60 a square foot is now $300 a square foot. And they said, well, I just can't pay it. I mean, they're having very difficult time paying it. The ACCG, we've had some meetings with them about their insurance pools for their workers, for county workers, and that's another problem that's hitting them hard. And then the other thing that you hear, and some people tell me they don't want to say it publicly. I don't know why. I don't have a problem saying it publicly. We've got a lot of counties whose county commissions are just dead set against raising property tax for lots of different reasons. But the two that I commonly hear are, well, our school taxes are already very high, and we get pushed back. And so we're trying to hold the line on, property tax, for M&O tax for the county, because our school taxes are so high, and we just don't want to increase the tax burden on the local, which you can understand. And then
Dr. Bridge, we have some other questions,
Okay.
And we're running.
Okay.
Let me call on Representative Williams to ask you a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened very closely, and this is not popular among sitting elected officials, but I'm so glad this Development Council has finally come since 17, because we spent too many years in Georgia worried about another part of the state and didn't do anything, and we bought the fire truck when the fire had almost burnt the city down. So finally we're trying to catch up with the fire that's gone. But my problem's a little different, and you're gonna hear this a lot, and I don't get much reaction to this. But in a rural county, a little city that's in my district, 2,900, 19 projects are on the table that we can't do because we can't get the water that we need. We can buy it to the south of us from a green county, but by the time you pay for the water and pay the other things that's equated, your water bills in this little town is going to go from $24 a month to $48 a month immediately. And the water we need is right below us, but we can't change the allotment. We need 1 million gallons more than we're allotted now. And nobody wants to talk about this. But then we got cities that's dying, and we got counties that are dying, we got one that wants to live, but the bureaucracy has decided you're going to die because we can't change the rules. I need to know how we're going to deal with these issues.
Well, that's another day, isn't it? We're gonna have to. You're gonna have to deal with Dr. Bridges.
Keep putting them days off, 'cause they ain't gonna last
They're getting
for long.
shorter, aren't they?
They're getting
I ain't
short.
getting in that fight.
Chairman Workhouse.
Do I need to push it? Okay, thank you, Chairman. One solution that we've talked about since I've been on this council from day one, and Ms. Hagan over here leaned over and said one word, and I thought Penny Houston was going to bring us a bill to either with carrot or a stick to consolidate some of these cities and counties. You alluded on counties. We can't even get, I got 2 counties of 10,000 people. I don't know how many fire departments we have that do 3 fires a year. We paid Carl Vincent Institute tens of thousands of dollars to do a study. They showed we could save $80,000 a year, and they decided to still not consolidate. Penny, I thought you were going to bring us a bill to force some of these cities and counties.
You don't. You really don't.
Well, we don't need 5 fire departments.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
it. You can go to the next person.
All right, this is the last question here, and it goes to Chairman Smith.
Presentation and the identifying the problems. Are there nearby neighboring states, because the ones like us in the South, they are facing these same problems? Who's come up with something creative to make a difference? I think it would help us. And when you consolidate, you create a king or a queen. And I think your governments might lean more towards sharing without losing what creates them as a county. So I think that's a problem to solve. How do you consolidate yet not select your kingpin?
Right. Well, I'm like I said, the consolidation issue is y'all's issue. There's nothing I can do about that. But I think the concept of consolidating and sharing services without redrawing county lines is valid. And I'll give you 2 quick examples, Chairman Green, and I'll be done. I pulled the data for coverage, broadcast capability coverage in the state of Georgia. I started looking at Georgia Public TV broadcast towers and what part of the state is covered. And I added to that Georgia Public Broadcast radio towers. And then I started adding some other networks, corrections, state patrol, et cetera, other state assets that have towers around the state. And I haven't finished this, but it looks like to me we have between 350 and 400% coverage of Georgia with communications network. Yet we've got a little county in southwest Georgia that's got 5 different radio contracts for first responders, EMS, fire, police, etc. They're all paying for it. They're all out there putting it out to bid. Again, lack of scale, lack of efficiency. Counties don't want to give up their identity. Communities don't want to give up their identity.
Yeah.
But if you give them enough relief in terms of cost, you might buy a little interest in working together. So my question is, why couldn't we take a group of counties in southwest Georgia and the state provide the infrastructure for communications? They already have towers. And provide common emergency first responder communications capability, and they'd all start working together. I believe you can do the same thing with some of these infrastructure projects, sewer and water. Let's take 5 counties that all have sewer and water projects and needs, pull them together, achieve some scale, and help them learn to work together. We don't have to buy them into doing it, but it's better than doing nothing.
That's a great suggestion, Lee. We do have one more individual. Chairman Tarver, I overlooked his hand, and Chairman Tarver.
I'll try to be as quick as possible. Just a couple of things. We talk about infrastructure, and at Chairman Blackman's, some of the younger people, I'll go back to the 1960s. Walker County was the 12th most populous county in the state of Georgia. The reason we know that, we had it on our tag. And up in that area, we've got Dade County, very rural, about 18,000 people. Chattooga County, about 20-something thousand, very rural. Walker and Catoosa County are what I want to get around to. They're both about 70,000 people now. Walker County is about 3 times the land mass. Well, there's something happened in the 60s called the Interstate Highway. Dade County, about 18,000 people, sales tax revenue is about $17,000 per capita due to I-59 going from Chattanooga to Birmingham, and very few people, but still. Walker was larger than Whitfield and Catoosa. Now Catoosa's digest is much higher. They're a bedroom community of Chattanooga, plus the industry's moving in there. Their retail sales per capita is about 15,000. And Whitfield County at one time was smaller than Walker. Now it's probably 80% bigger. Still runs about 17,000 when the carpet was booming, plus the freeway. And no matter where we go, when you get away from a freeway, it's hard to get larger business to go there. And so I don't know how we get into the really rural areas that we're talking about, but Walker County and Chattooga County are in between the 2 freeways, and our retail sales per capita in Walker is 7,000 out of 70,000 people, and Chattooga, just between us and Floyd County, is 5,000. And that's a big difference when you're in the same community and you got this county thriving with a lower tax digest than the county of the same size. And back to something that Representative Washburn said, we still have in our younger years, we heard cities say we don't want residential annexation because it won't pay for itself. They said that for years. Well, a lot of these people are still involved in the county. We have a lot of counties that don't want more houses for some reason. And that's the only tax digest they have of growing their tax digest. And they literally, some counties don't want growth. And that's something maybe through education we can tell them, yeah, they need something to tax more. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Dr. Bridges, we're going to be calling on you as we finalize our report and for recommendations and everything. Thank you for the hard work you've done. Thank you for being the friend that you are to this council, and thank you for what you do as the individual that we can call on for help.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're going to stop for lunch right now, and Leo is going to put up a selection of places for individuals to go. But the RDC members, if you will go up to the 5th floor, we have lunch prepared for the RDC members. Thank y'all. We'll be back at 1 o'clock.
I had to go make some phone calls, so I just went ahead and picked my wife up. She go eat lunch with us.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, kids.